Well, heidi-ho everyone, from Mr. Burgher's YouTube channel, it's Kermit the Frog here. So I heard Mr. Burgher's gonna make a YouTube video about Jim Henson, aka my father. Yeah. So why don't you sit back and relax with some popcorn or a drink or whatever you want and enjoy a nice long video about Jim Henson. Mr. Burgher, take it away.
Art 101 with Mr. Burgher.
Thank you, Kermit, for the nice little introduction there, and welcome back, scholars, to another episode of Art 101 with me, Mr. Burgher. I'm a professional artist, master educator, attempting to bring you the best in art historical content. If you like this one, please give me a like, a share, a subscribe, a comment, and interaction goes a long way. Thank you very much.
Why don't you get me started?
As has been mentioned, today we're going to talk a little bit about an innovator, a puppeteer, a creative spirit, a person that's really influenced me and this channel and my Burger Acres channel and my children's lives and, so on and so on. But with Jim Henson, you can really go down a lot of rabbit holes, frog holes. You can go down the idea of, his early things, his Sesame Street runs, his influences with the Muppet Show and feature film, and his later things that he was doing, and his innovations with puppetry and robotics and all that sort of thing. But I don't want to focus on any one thing. I want to look at him as an artistic whole, as opposed to really diving deep into any one thing. This is Art 101 after all, so we really can't focus too heavily on any one thing, but just to kind of give you a broad brush of who he was, so that when you get out of this video, you have a gist of who Jim Henson was and the types of things that he did, and then you can jump off onto other avenues that are a little bit more specific to the type of work that he was doing, because again, he was doing such a broad array of things. So let's get after it. Hailing from the bogs of Greenville, Mississippi, Jim Henson would develop into a puppeteer, cartoonist, animator, actor, inventor, filmmaker, screenwriter, and much more.
I was interested in television and films and art, and actually then when I went into puppetry, I found that I could combine all of this stuff.
His creative perspective on things really would innovate people's approaches to film and learning all around the world.
Now, what were you like as a child?
I was a tadpole.
These ideas were in his mind from a very young age and developed throughout his high school years. Here's what his wife had to say about that.
He enjoyed all theater. Mostly he was doing sets and things like that in high school, and a little bit of puppets, but mostly he was intrigued with television. And Bert Tillstrom had Kukla, Fran, and Ollie on at that time, and Bill Baird had puppets on, and he was intrigued by their puppets on television, but mostly he was intrigued with television. And he had an opportunity to try some puppets on television.
After high school, he would attend the University of Maryland, where he would develop Sam and Friends. This was a little short that went between the local news and the Tonight Show. Sam and Friends was really the beginning idea of what would evolve into the Muppets, which is really a play on marionette and puppet. It was during the time of the running of this show that he would develop the character of Kermit the Frog. Now, Kermit the Frog really began as kind of a snarky sort of character and became more of the straight frog to the crazy that was the Muppets. He would also become a very serious character on Sesame Street, as well as being featured on Muppet Babies, numerous feature films, and even guest hosted Johnny Carson's Tonight Show.
He was originally made from an old coat of my mother's. And it was a coat from the rag bag. And
was it a green coat, that color green?
It wasn't that color. No, he was My mother didn't wear that color green, but it was more of a sort of a turquoise color. And the eyes were a ping pong ball cut in half. It was very simple. It was like a sock puppet.
Sometimes I'm really amazed at my own creativity.
During this time, Jim would work with a classmate that became a girlfriend that became his wife, Jane. And they would work together for years because she was never afraid to be honest with Jim about his ideas, and he respected her for that. Even as their marriage became very rocky at times, he trusted her instincts with the Muppets.
You wouldn't ask Captain Kangaroo how's his sex life?
No, I wouldn't.
Can you imagine that?
You're absolutely right.
After graduating with a degree in home economics, he would use these creations as a tool to produce advertisements like these.
What you doing? I'm kneading Clausen's bread. Ho ho, who needs it?
Think of Wilkins coffee. I never tasted it. Now what do you think of Wilkins?
If ordinary dog foods leave you flat, try Purina dog chow, right?
Right.
What do you feed 12 hungry Cub Scouts?
May I make a suggestion?
Who are you?
I'm the LaChoy Dragon.
Yeah, real dragon.
What you need is LaChoy Chow Mein.
He always knew from the very beginning that commerce and art were a symbiotic duo, that he had to make the money in commercials to do the stuff he wanted to do.
As Jim Henson was becoming more and more involved with different endeavors, he needed a team to really work with, and one of the major players in that was the hiring of writer Jerry Jewell and puppet performer / director Frank Oz.
What's with the bark? What do you mean, what's with the bark? That's the way Lassie talks. Doesn't she know how to speak English?
Now, prior to the 1960s, there was a lot of local television and the occasional big-time network exposure, but Jim Henson's first major national audience came on the Jimmy Dean Show. Rolf the Dog was first developed for bits like this from 1963 to 1966.
Dogs only bark? That's right. What am I, a kangaroo?
Side note, although Kermit might be the most famous Muppet, they say that Rolf the Dog is the most like the personality of Jim Henson.
Yeah, whatever.
In 1969, he was asked to be a part of the concept team for the Children's Television Workshop in their development of a program for children and helping them to learn called Sesame Street.
These kids can't read or write, can they?
No.
Then how's about we call the show Hey Stupid?
Hey, stupid. What are we gonna do for a title? Hey, Ralph? Why don't you call your show Sesame Street? My entire career as a TV educator nipped in the... What was that? Kermit. Why, you're a genius. Mwah! Yuck. Sesame Street. I love it. The kids will love it. I can see it. Up there in lights, the Children's Television Workshop presents Sesame Street.
As they were compiling information on what the kids liked, what really helped them learn, they would notice that the kids were much more attentive with the puppets than they were with the live-action people. So, it was decided to build a whole neighborhood of a mixture of puppets and humans that would interact and live together to teach the children how to be a community.
Boy, that's amazing. That's the most incredible thing I've ever heard of.
Jim developed many of the characters that we grew up with on Sesame Street, including Grover, Bert and Ernie, the Cookie Monster, Oscar the Grouch, and Big Bird, as well as many others. It was around this time, in the first couple of seasons of Saturday Night Live, that he and his team would produce about a month and a half worth of sketches for the show. But Lorne Michaels' ideas and Jim Henson's ideas of comedy weren't quite the same, so they decided to part ways in a very amicable sort of way. And it was right after this time that he would start to develop some ideas that would eventually evolve into what we know as The Muppet Show. At this time, there was really no such thing as cable television. There were only 5 network stations that you could receive on your television. And a lot of people were really incensed about the ideas of the sex and violence on television. So Jim Henson, as a call to that, would create a show called The Muppets Sex and Violence. It was a puppet show that really was geared towards adults. This show would become the pilot for what would become the Muppet Show, and he would use some of his old characters like Kermit the Frog and Rolf the Dog, but also develop new characters to go along with the cast, including Fozzie Bear, Miss Piggy, and the Electric Mayhem Band.
Wow, I can't believe we're all back together.
In 1979, the Muppet Movie was his first theatrical feature. It was a huge success that made over $65 million just in the United States.
Classic.
There are many Muppet fans that will debate whether or not Yoda is a Muppet, but it is a fact that the producers of The Empire Strikes Back reached out to him in the early 1980s, late 1970s to help develop the character of Yoda, and it was upon his suggestion to George Lucas that they used Frank Oz as the puppeteer and voice of Yoda. George Lucas was not a big fan, but upon seeing Frank really bring this character to life, he was sold. And Yoda becomes the Yoda that we know because of Jim Henson.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
A couple years later, he would help develop and co-direct The Dark Crystal with Frank Oz, and then The Labyrinth in 1986. These were very different films for Jim to create, a completely different set of characters than what we found on The Muppet Show or Sesame Street. But he was really intrigued with the robotics and the innovations that he could bring to puppetry in these medias. And that innovation would go on to help create more and more characters, including dinosaurs and more techie sorts of Muppets. In the last few years of his life, Jim would have a hand in creating the Fraggle Rock series, Muppet Babies, The Storyteller, the Jim Henson Hour, where he received many awards and accolades. Side note, wanting to develop a series that would promote world peace, Jim Henson would develop Fraggle Rock as the first HBO original series.
No. Whatever it is, no.
Fan art is a big part of the experience that we have with our favorite franchises and organizations and things like that. Here is some advice from Jim Henson and his creative team about how to properly create Muppet fan art.
One of the things that we've always found in trying to teach people how to draw or sculpt Kermit is that while he is so very, very simple in shape, that simplicity is very deceptive. That there are extraordinary subtleties to that shape, and yes, indeed, and to the personality, and especially to the humor. That as Jim was saying, that basically he is a piece of fabric wrapped around his hand. I think it's very useful in terms of puppets in general, when thinking about how to translate them into other media, to remember that the basic skeleton of the puppet is the human hand and arm, and that whatever is going on with the puppet is very often, almost always, with some exceptions, but almost always, based around that shape. So that when you start out thinking about how to depict these characters, remember that that is the shape, that's the shape of the skull. It's very dramatically illustrated in Kermit when you look at him in profile, because you can really see the shape of the hand in there. The top of the skull is a knuckle coming up there. And those little subtleties that can be done with the knuckle or with the fingers really create an extraordinary variety of expression. Then the other thing that you learn from that is that if you do hold your arm up at a natural angle, as if you were a puppeteer, you'll find you're almost automatically at maybe not quite a 45-degree angle, but darn close to it.
Yeah. Sort of lean forward.
Yeah, and that's something that you really want to try to remember to capture, maybe not as dramatically as it is in real life, but to capture some of that feeling when you are figuring out how to depict these puppets in other media.
Okay. Jim Henson would make his last television appearance on the Arsenio Hall Show in May of 1990.
Hey, Ross. Hey! Son of a bitch! No, wait, no. That's the nicest thing a dog can say about anybody. Yeah.
We can hear him coughing and having problems throughout the interview. However, just 11 days after the Arsenio Hall Show, he would wake up on the morning of May 15th coughing up blood. After a couple of hours of debating with his wife, he agreed to be taken to the emergency room. Shortly after entering, he would stop breathing and be rushed into the intensive care unit. X-rays revealed that he had ruptured abscesses in his lungs that were from a previous bacterial infection. he would be intubated and put on a very intense treatment of antibiotics that was rapidly spreading through his body. But at the age of 53, sadly, he would die of bacterial pneumonia, and his ashes would be scattered in New Mexico. His funeral was really a celebration of all of the things that he was a part of, and he would leave these lasting ideas to his children.
There was also a letter specifically from him to the kids. Please watch out for each other and love and forgive everybody. It's a good life. Enjoy it. This all may sound silly and over the top to you guys, but what the hell, I'm gone, and who can argue with me?
Tell you what, love that story. Cheers to Jim Henson. Thanks for watching.
I finish work, I go home, read a book, have a couple of beers, take myself for a walk, and go to bed.